And all she used was a candle, a pendulum, and of course a notepad and a pen. And she wrote down questions, she got answers, she wrote down those answers, and she ended up handing those to the police. And 2 weeks later, after giving them those notes, she actually got a phone call that they were able to uncover her mom's belongings. The only thing was missing was cash that was still in her mom's purse that was no longer there. I think it goes to show you that perhaps Hollywood like to tell us that ghosts are scary and they're intense, but maybe sometimes they want to help us. They want to give us love. They want to protect us. And sometimes maybe it's just our ancestors coming through when we need them the most. And so I really value the stories here at Victoria's Black Swan Inn because I do think they are deeply personal ones. Now, we've experienced some strange things in this room. The strangest things that we've experienced are footsteps when nobody's around. But perhaps the creepiest thing is that this toilet that's in this restroom has flushed several times on its own when we've been doing tours, these kinds of things, and those are pretty much unexplained to this day. So I'd like to include a little bit about this room, especially if you've seen that Ghost Adventures episode. Any questions? No? Okay, let's go ahead and head back towards the staircase. If you want to just follow and meet Stephen at the staircase, he will talk to you there about your lineage.
Does it really?
Yeah, they were really fond of. Please show a few
I saw it now inside. Wasn't there on the wall inside with the big flowers around it.
Do you have any questions while we're waiting for everybody to get here?
How did it become the Victoria's Black Swan Inn?
As
Like,
far
where
as
did the name
the
come
name,
from?
yeah, really good question. So, the Black Swan Inn was Shakespeare's favorite pub. And Victoria, she named it Victoria because she has a familial lineage to Queen Victoria. And so she put that together, and that's how she got Victoria's Black Swan Inn. So it's not like an inn like that people can stay in. It's just a venue, and she called it Victoria's Black Swan Inn. Great question.
Great name.
Yeah, it's a really cool name too, right?
Does the current owner actually live in this house?
Absolutely. So Joanne Rivera and her family, they've lived here since the 1980s. They reside upstairs. So that's why we don't take folks upstairs. It's kind of their private space where they maintain their privacy. And so, yeah, she lives here, and, you know, they've dealt with haunts for a really long time.
So events, they or have access to this in events?
Correct. It depends on the event, but it's either outside primarily, but if there is an inside element, it's the inside.
Wow.
All right, y'all. So we're going to go ahead and talk a little bit about the staircase here because it does have a connection to one of the family members. And this goes back to Jolene Wood Street and her husband, Park Street Jr., who inherited the house from their mother and aunt. And so, as Fred mentioned, they were kind of a well-known couple. Park Street was a politician, a local lawyer, very charismatic, and they were the it couple of San Antonio. People knew them, people talked about them, and naturally people started rumors about them as well. Some people were saying that Jolene was cheating on Park Street, and at another point people were saying that she was pregnant with another man's baby. Now, none of these rumors were ever proven to be true, but it had to have some impact on the relationship. And we do know that both of them did face untimely deaths. And first to pass in 1959 is going to be Jolene. In the days prior to her death, Jolene is found right here, at the bottom of the staircase. It was said to be an accident, but some people in the city thought it was a little bit fishy. Some people in the city thought, well, maybe it had something to do with their marital issues, and maybe the husband pushed her. Again, these were just rumors, but an interesting thing happened after her fall. They had a friend of the family come by. His name is Porter Loring Jr. If you're familiar with the Porter Loring Mortuary, this is the exact same family. Porter Loring Jr. had access to painkillers, and he came and administered drugs to Jolene after her fall. Some say that the drugs were the true cause of her death. However, if you look up her death certificate, Jolene's death certificate, the cause of death will actually say breast cancer. And this was a huge surprise to her closest friends, her family, her confidants. She was known to tell her friends and family everything about her life. And some of these folks were just like, why didn't she tell me, you know? And so there were a lot of questions surrounding her death. And many of these remained unanswered. But since she died, there were people describing seeing her in the afterlife, full body apparition of a woman resembling Jolene. Some describe her as a lady in white because she's often seen outside of the house, just kind of wearing a long white dress with her hair and her dress kind of billowing in the wind. And she's never described as a dark, evil, malevolent spirit. She's actually described as the opposite, as warm, as welcoming, peaceful even. And I think that's kind of reflective of how she lived her life. She was known to be an amazing hostess and welcome people to this property. Now, one of the first stories that Joanne Rivera, the current owner, shared with us was a communication session that she had with a group of people, and they were trying to directly connect with Jolene. Somebody in the group, they asked out loud, and they had a recorder playing, and they asked, "Why are you stuck here, Jolene?" And they got a response in the recorder shortly after that said, "I'm not stuck here, this is my home." And then they got an even more surprising response, and it was talking directly to Joanne Rivera, and it said, "And this is your home too, Joanne." So that phrase, "this is your home too," you can imagine was really significant to her because she's lived here since the 80s, raised a family, hosted events, maintained the property, and had to live with all the activity. And so for her to hear "this is your home too," it was so important that she had that phrase inscribed into a piece of jewelry that she still has to this day. And I think that goes back with what Fred was mentioning in Faye's room, is that, a lot of people jump to conclusions if they experience a haunt, especially in their home. It's evil, it's bad. But we really believe a lot of times spirits do want to coexist with us. They want to give us messages. They want to be acknowledged. And a lot of times those are positive experiences. Now the story does continue with Park Street, the husband. So we're going to take you into his office in the other wing of the house. Just a warning, there's going to be a step down into the hallway, and there's also no air conditioning in this house.
Step down right here. Yeah, fancy basket, huh?
Big painting.
Remember how I was telling you about that little balcony section that was kind of creepy? It's right here.
Alright, feel free to come on in. We have a few chairs here at the table. You're welcome to have a seat or get closer if you like. Just want to make sure everybody has room to come in. Yeah, feel free. Alright, y'all. I think this is us, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to Park Street's old office. Now, after Jolene passes away in 1959, Park Street would remarry, and he would move off-site to a new house with his new wife, very close by. He would maintain his office in this room, though, and his children lived in the house with their grandmother. And so he would frequent back and forth for many years, up until 1965, when he dies. The official cause of death on Park Street's death certificate would say death by asphyxiation, and it was believed to be a suicide. However, there are some pretty peculiar things surrounding his death. The first being the way that he was found. You see, he was found in his new house by his new wife. He had a necktie around his neck and was tied to his bedpost. But there were also some eyewitness accounts that stated that he was found with his hands tied behind his back. So the way that he was found was confusing. But to add to that confusion was an interesting statement by the second wife. After this tragedy happened, she said in her official statement, "I did not notice he was missing until he did not come downstairs for breakfast." That very specific language, downstairs for breakfast, was peculiar because they only had a one-story house. There was no upstairs or downstairs. Now, the final thing that made this a very kind of mysterious death was the coroner's report. And in the official coroner's report, the coroner wrote that they believed that the body had been tampered with and potentially moved from one location to another location. So fast forward to the 1980s, Joanne Rivera moves to this property, and she pretty much immediately starts experiencing activity. And it happens so often that she decides that she wants to invite psychics and mediums to come and get impressions of the house. And many of these folks, as soon as they walk